Okay, it's gonna be just a second. I unplugged something, so I gotta find the camera. Apparently I was working with my setup the other day and didn't realize that I changed something. So I've got to figure out where my power is. And I think I figured it out. Now I just got to figure out where it's plugged in. So how's everybody doing today while I'm searching for stuff here? Let me know what you're thinking in the chat. And hopefully in a moment I'll actually have power. Or not. Let me try that again. Apparently I knocked a cord out maybe. So I'm just trying to check to see what's going on here, so give me a second. Let's try that again. Well, I might have to switch the way I do this. We'll see if it works. Oh, there it goes. So it's kind of zoomed in at the moment. And I was kind of prepping the area for a tutorial on something else. So let me get this out of the way. Obviously there's some new stuff coming out that I want to show you, but not in live stream. So I'll let your imagination run wild, but I'll show you some old stuff. So a bunch of people have been asking about how to work with some of the old stuff that I have. And one of those things was the ramps. So I want to do that first, and then I'll show you other stuff having to do with the LCD again for the TFT. Let me check on the chat here. Of course, no one can hear me. You're hearing an echo? Hang on a second, let me fix that. Apparently I was messing with my setup a little. Is that better? I don't know if anybody can hear me at the moment. How's the sound now? Is there an echo or is it gone? Otherwise I'm going to have to go to my webpage and listen. Okay, give me a second to grab a board here. So somebody asked about how to deal with the ramps. It's been a while since I've worked with this, so this is going to be kind of fun. I have to clean up my power supply. So I'm going to pull this down so you can see kind of what I'm doing. Of course, I've got to see it too, so let me change it so it looks better here. Okay, I only have one cable. I need two for this. So what I'm going to have to do is add a second one. So I have one over on the shelf, and if you can't see, COM is ground and V plus is voltage. This is a 12 volt fan, as you can see. So I need a screwdriver real quick. So I need to have two power outlets here. So I'm going to use my crimp connectors. And then I'm going to find the COM and screw this in as well. Okay, so these match up. I'm going to move this out of the way. Stick it back where it used to be. Bring up the second cable. So I have two cables that I'm using for this. Actually, I may have attached the wrong one on the second one. Let me check it here. Oh, there we go. So in order to do this, I need to look at what he wrote on his particular issue. So I'm going to pull up Discord so you can see what I'm doing. So over on Discord, somebody probably sent me a message. Let me see if it's in here. I think it's this one. So let's see if I can download these real quick. But first I gotta check my downloads folder because I know it's gonna be full of stuff. So I'm gonna clean it out real quick and then I'll do this again. Okay, so now that that's cleaned out, I'll do the download real quick. Let me just get back to where I was. There we go. So 1, 2, 3. So it's not going to let me pull down the platform io.ini, but I can decipher that one. So we'll look at the other two. And let me just close this window that opened up. And make sure you can see what I'm seeing. So now we're going to open this. We have two files, configuration.h, and inside here we're going to check the version real quick. So I'm going to scroll down to see what he's working with. And it looks like he's working with 2.0.8.1. 2.0.8.2 just came out. So we'll do a file compare to sort these out. So I'm going to open a temp folder. And we'll call it compare. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the recent download. So over here I'm going to go to Marlin firmware and make sure it didn't change again. So it's still 2.0.8.2. So I'm going to download that. That should be almost downloaded, hopefully. So let's go back over here. It is. So I'll right click and I'll extract all. And this will take a moment to extract. And then what we have to do is basically compare the two files. So I'm going to call these, or I'm going to copy these, put them in the compare folder. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the first one and rename it _2_0_8_2. And I'm going to do the same for the other one. So I'm going to rename this real quick and copy it. So I'll copy this part. I'll right click, do the same over here, and paste it so that we can tell the difference between the two. So while that was happening, this opened up. So I'm going to copy out the Marlin config files. So I'm going to click here, copy. I'm going to go back up to the downloads, go to compare, paste them. That way now the names don't match. I'm going to click on this and click on this. And then I'm going to right click, and I have Tortoise SVN, so I'm going to do a diff. And inside here, we're going to see what's going on. So the one on the left is the current version of Marlin that's not been changed. It's default. So we need to change it. So I'm going to click over here, copy this. And I know there's an easy way to do this, but I'm just doing it on purpose this way. And I'm going to paste it over this one. Or I'm just going to change it manually by saying -1. But I need to see what kind of motherboard he has because I'm not sure which one I'm working with. So I'm going to scroll down through here. He's using an SKR Turbo in this case. So this is one particular person's configuration. And I have to go back and see what his question is because I thought I was working with the ramps, so I might have them confused. But it looks like I'm going to have to change turbo. And the other diff is he's got serial port -1 for the second serial port. And then he's got 0, or excuse me, -1 for this. He's got 0 for the other. So he's probably working with the display. So let's look at this real quick because I'm getting obviously questions from different people confused. Let's see. Z homing doesn't work, but the axis works well. Can briefly check the Z homing in Marlin. I'm quite desperate. Don't know what I'm doing wrong. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. It might be that he's using DRV8825 drivers, so I got to figure out how to do that. So we'll figure that out in a second. Let me check for the other person as well, because I've got their setup up here. So it might be dropped in here. Notice it's a little busy in here now. Lots of people can answer questions besides myself. Don't know where his is. So I may have to go over to YouTube and see what it said. Let me see. Oh, that's for Discord. It might be in one of the separate chats. Sorry about this. It just takes me a second to figure out where the comments are. Okay, it might be in here still. Okay, that's going to be for the SKR. That's a different question that he asked me in the comments. Let's see if it's in suggested videos. Huh. Apparently I'm not finding all my own channels. That's awesome. There we go. So general open chat. Somebody's having a conversation about their configuration. I know this is slightly boring, I know. But I have to go through and find... Oh, those are people sharing their designs. So there was one for YouTube requests. I don't know if it's in here. So auto bed leveling is a little bit of work to show people. I have to actually have a different setup and move things around. So I'm going to start with this setup and we'll go back and see what his question is. Sorry, I had to move around a little here to figure it out. So I think he was talking about the DRV8825 stepper drivers. So I'm going to have to switch boards, and then I'm going to have to look at the other configuration, and I'm guessing the person might be in chat right now. Hey, Halfred, sorry, I'm not pronouncing it very well. So let me start with this configuration they're doing. So let me get this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to pull this out of the way. I'm going to clean up the material that I left behind. And I'm going to grab an SKR board. Now I just got to grab the right one. So this is going to be an SKR Turbo. My other one, the non-turbo's in a printer right now, so can't grab it right away. So I'm going to put this down and put some pressure on it. And what we're going to do for this is we're going to set up the actual configuration for the steppers, and he's using what's known as a DRV8825, which gives you 1/32 of a step, and I think he said it doesn't work, which is a possibility with the new firmware. So what I need to do right now is find the actual steppers, which I probably have in a box someplace. Every time I clean up, I actually make a mess because I don't know where I put things. So I think it's over here. Okay, I do have it. So I don't have the cooling fins on it at the moment. So let's see if I can zoom in a little so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry, give me a second here to click the right thing. So here's the stepper driver. Let me see if I can move it in so you can see it. And we're looking for the enable pin. So I'm going to rotate it over. And on the bottom, you're going to see that the enable pin is someplace around here. In this case, it's EN. So the enable pin, we need to figure out where that is on the board. So let me just set this down. So the enable pin is going to be located right here. Whoop, let me zoom out. So the enable pin is going to be located right here on the board for the stepper. Now we have to find it on here, so I'll show you the logical way to do it. So if we go over to the browser, on the browser, we're going to open a new one real quick, and we'll go to GitHub, and I think it takes us to Big Tree Tech. And we're looking for the SKR 1.3 because that's where the 1.4 is hidden. And you can see BTT SKR 1.4 or V1.4. And then we have hardware. And in here we're going to look for the pinouts. Now I know they changed one of these, so the JPEG pinout is not as good for me as this one. So down here we should see something that says enable. But we're not seeing it, which is okay. So we'll go back and we'll see if we can see it on the other one. So here it is, EN, and then it's showing the first pin, EN, and the first pin, EN, and the first pin, and so on and so forth. This one's a good reference because someone's marked out everything on the board so that it's easier to find. Notice the pin numbers. It is the same on this one, except you're not seeing the pin numbers. You have to actually flip the board over to see the EN and then follow it on the board. But you can see all the pin numbers. That's why this is such a useful document, because you can know how to communicate on the board and where the grounds and voltages are on the board. So let me go back and insert this, but before we insert it, what we need to actually find is the directions. So I'm going to go to the instructions manual, and inside here we're going to scroll down and look for it. So we're doing driver step dir mode. This is step direction mode. So you can use an A4988, a DRV8825, an LV8729, an ST820. I think I have those someplace, but I never do tutorials on them. But as you can see, there's MS1, 2, 3, and then reset sleep. It's saying to jump all of these pins right here. So we're going to go back over to the board and do that. So on the board, what we're going to do is we're going to pop out the jumper from the other tutorial. Normally they're like this, and we're going to jump them back in. So I'm only going to do this on the x-axis, and I'm also going to move this down in a second. Just need to slide in these pins. Obviously I can't see as well because this is normally further down. So let's put that there. I'm going to move this over for a second, and I got to find my jumper pins. So we're going to put this in here, and then we have to do 2 more. And now we have to do 1 more, and hopefully I'm putting these in correctly. Granted, there's no direction on them, but I want to make sure I'm on the right pins. So it's all 4 of the pins right here. So now that that's done, we know the enable pin is located right here, and it's also located right here. If you put this in backwards, it will smoke it. So you want to put it in correct. So one good way to tell is your potentiometer for this stepper only, I don't know about the other ones, is pointing this way towards the power. Also, if you look on the underside, it says enable. So that's now in. I'm going to move this into range so we can work with it. Give me a second to move it so that it doesn't look like it's a mess. And I have to grab the cord. So the cord's going to go in here, and that'll take care of that. Next thing is I need to modify the power supply real quick because I actually attached extra power to this. So let me pop this off real quick. Okay, so we only need the 1 power cable in this particular case. I'm running 12 volts of power, so we're not going to make too many mods. And I'm going to have to actually connect this up. Now, you notice how I'm using ferrule connectors, and I always emphasize these. The reason for that is safety, because it locks in the wires so they don't touch by accident inside these little ferrule connectors, and you crimp them on. I also mark my board with a red mark for voltage and a no mark for ground. But what we're going to do is double check the actual browser to see what that says for ground and voltage, so we're connecting to the right things. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go to the pinout diagram again. And I always like to double check this because I have issues with plugging in power wrong. So as you can see, it says DC in or direct current in. And then it says bed, hot end 0 and hot end 1, or the first extruder, second extruder. This can also be used for a fan. And as you can see, there's a pin on this fan that allows you control, but that's a little bit more work to set up. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to connect the power. So I'm going to go back over to the workbench. I'm going to grab the power. This is disconnected power-wise at the moment. And I'm going to slide these in to little connectors underneath here. So there's the voltage. I'm going to tie that down so it doesn't pop out. And do the same for ground. And that's nice and snug and safe. So we're good there. Next, I'm going to find the correct power cord because I have multiple power supplies. And I'm going to trace out my cables to make sure I'm good. I'm going to place this over here for the moment. And I'm going to show you how to load via the USB only. So the jumper for this, if it were over here, that's when you're running with power. We're going to run off USB power just to set this up. So I'm going to drop this right in here. And that will set up the actual power. So next thing I'm going to do is actually connect the USB. You're going to probably hear a tone if it's working. Now that that's connected, let's go over to the computer and see what's going on. So on my desktop, if I go over to the actual desktop, you can see that there's a firmware.cur that was already loaded. This is a cursor file, but the cur means current in this case. That's just the extension they're using. And when it's in capital letters, it means that it loaded once before. If you need to reload this on a separate system, you would rename it firmware lowercase letters .bin for binary. But for now, you'll see that in a second when we go into VS Code. So inside VS Code, we're going to click on Explorer, Open Folder. We're going to go to our Downloads folder, Marlin 2.0, Marlin 2.0, select the folder. Inside here, we're going to select the Marlin folder, Source folder, and the Core folder. Inside here, I need to select boards.h, and I need to search on SKR. And we're looking for the turbo version, which is not the LPC 1768, but the 1769, which is a different processor. So we're going to highlight it, copy it. Then we're going to go and minimize core and source. Go to configuration.h, search on it for motherboard. We're going to paste it over where the ramps is. And inside here, we now have our correct board. If you're running an 8-bit processor, this would remain 0 for your first serial port. But we're running a 32-bit, so I'm going to change it to -1. Now, there are multiple serial ports now. There were 2 to 3 of them that were added right here. So the third one is brand new with this 2.0.8 release. Whereas this one has always existed since 2.0. This is usually used for your display, but this can be interchangeable with this, but currently it's commented out. So now that we have that set up, let's set up the stepper drivers. So I'm going to search on A4988, and right now they've uncommented these in this actual configuration. Originally, when this first came out, because these didn't exist, or this functionality wasn't here in the original version of Marlin, they added it to make it simpler because there are only usually 2 steppers. But in this case, we have several now. Originally, it was the A4988, then it went to a DRB8825, and then there were other ones that just rolled out right after that. So we're going to just copy this. and I'm going to paste it in for the X driver, and we're good there. So now that that's set, we're set for the DRB 8825 in theory. So down here, there's some interesting stuff that I may have talked about in the past. This is the default value for what they think you're going to start at. That can be dependent on your gearing. So if I open up a browser real quick here, and I type, I think rep, sorry, I got the calculator. We're going to go to the very first one for this one right here, and we're going to look around. So we're, in theory, running a cable belt driven system. Our stepper is not 1/16 for the maximum degree of step, it's actually 1/32. So I'm going to click there, and notice how it says 400. That's based on the belt preset, which is probably going to be GT2, which this one has. And then the pulley count in this case, I'm guessing is 16, which brings it back down to 200. It could be off, but this is the number of teeth on your pulley for your GT2. It might even be higher, it might even be 20. But you can see that that's double 80. So if you go over here and you go with the default 1/16 of a step, this is the derived value that they're probably working with. But in this case, we're going to up it right here to 160. So we're going to copy that. Then we're going to go back over to here, and we're going to paste it right here. That's all you need to do for your setup. There are other settings in here that I don't want to get into because they'll become very confusing very quick. But this is the main thing when you're setting up at the beginning of your printer experience to learn how to do. And that's why I covered that in a little bit of detail. The rest of it I don't want to cover in detail at the moment because I'll just confuse you and also cause problems for you. So it's best to learn this and then read up on this before you start changing it, because there are a lot of things that can occur very quickly with the stuff down below. Okay, so let's go back over to the actual setup for this. It's now platformio.ini. Inside here it does say Mega 2560, which is the default chipset. Remember, the default chipset is based on the ramps 1.4, which we just changed, and we're not using a ramps anymore. If we go back over to source core boards.h, we pulled this out of the LPC 1769. So I have to show you this real quick. In the INI folder, this is where we're going to find our information. So this is what they're talking about. They're saying point to these folders for the information on this. So they've basically broken this up into multiple files that you point to get the information. It's still one file, but this is a way of doing it in a programming language to say include these, and here is where they are. So in this case, we're using an LPC 176x.ini. So we click over here, and there's only two default environments, and one of them is LPC 1769. So we're going to copy that. Then we'll go back over to platformio.ini, highlight default environment, and paste it. So we're good there. Next thing you want to do, I've gone over this a lot during stream, is look at your .pio folder. When they initially build the actual release build that they're going to use, they always default it by probably compiling the Mega 2560. There's not a lot of files in here, but it's in here as is. So to get that out, a good process to get into is use the platform.io clean down here. So once you've cleaned it, you can go back and look at it, and you can see that inside here it doesn't exist anymore. So now we can actually click the checkbox. This will do a default build, and I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Let's see. The square pad is always pin number 1. The square pad. Okay. I think you're talking about processors, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly if the square pad is pointing one way or another. But squares on diagrams, I think, are ground normally, but on the way they do their diagrams on Big Tree Tech, it seems interchangeable. I think you mean wiring schematics, so let's go look at that real quick. So if I go over to the browser and I go over to Big Tree Tech, I think you're referring to this square pad. And then you see this square pad, it says ground, and then over here it's square. And then over here, if you look, the ground is square. And then they have squares again. So what this tells me is normally they think it's ground, but if you go around this, like right here, it's voltage. So I would not pay attention to what they're talking about for squares, only because in this case it would be voltage, whereas ground is in the middle. So whoever did their diagrams might not know what they're doing, or they got confused, or they think it looks pretty, but it's not the normal way you do it. You make it consistent throughout. But that's just me. I'm not an electrical engineer. Maybe there's a reason why they reversed these, because you can see it all over the place. But over in here, they don't show a square for the actual connection that you see, but they show it right here. And then they're consistent with the fans, but they don't show it consistently throughout. So these squares to me are meaningless on this diagram, or maybe I don't know what I'm doing, which is highly probable. But you can see that the I2C is doing it too. These are just little weird things that you'll see in diagrams. Here voltage is plus, and then you have a circle. So it's just odd. But I don't want to say that it's bad. I obviously don't know the answer as to why they're doing that, but maybe someone can teach me. So I'm going to minimize that, go back over here. I'm going to show you that the build is actually in the folder, so you can see there's firmware.bin. There's a couple ways we can load it. We could right click, we can go over to reveal in File Explorer, and this is based on what you can see here. You can actually right click and send it to the drive, and as you can see over here, it's not on there right now, but I just wanted to show you that method. The other method is you can copy it manually onto a flash card and then place it in there and then power up your device, and it'll load and end up with firmware.cur. But we're just going to do it the simple way, which is I'm going to click the right arrow and do an upload, which will be very quick, and then we'll check to see if it shows up. So on the D drive, it just showed up. It's firmware.bin. This is our binary. It will be renamed this when we power cycle the board. So let me show you that real quick. So on the board, the way we're going to do this, so I'm going to pull the power, then I'm going to plug it back in and watch for the flashing light someplace in here. It might not be easy to see, but we can verify it by going over to the computer. So on the computer, we'll click here. We'll go to the D drive. Notice the time and date is now 6:36 p.m. and it's been renamed, and firmware.bin is gone. So we know it loaded, allegedly successfully. So the next thing we want to try is actually to move the stepper. So at current, I don't have an end stop installed. I can drop one in, but it'll be backwards, or I can use one that's not electronically configured, but we're just going to see if it moves, and then we'll go to the actual device after that. So I'm going to go over to the workbench. I'm going to plug it in, And I'm going to verify all my connections are good before I do anything. And now I'll plug it in. So it's now powered up. So I'm going to go over to Pronterface. And in Pronterface, one of the problems that we run into, I'll show you right now, is that it says COM port 1. That's not our COM port. And if we click here, it says 14, but we don't know if that's ours. So I'm going to show you how to verify that. I've done this a lot of times, but it's always confusing when you're new. So I'm going to go to Device Manager, if I can spell it. Then I'm going to bring up the Device Manager so you can see it. And down here, we're going to look for ports. I'm going to click over here and it says 13. So we know that 14 is wrong, so we're just going to click here and we're going to say 13. We're going to go with the default speed that was in the firmware, and I'll show you that one last time. If we go over to configuration.h and search on motherboard, this will get you in the neighborhood. Scroll up a little. That's your default bitrate. So a lot of people get that confused, or the example files they use a different one. The board can run on that. So now that we're done with that, I'll bring it up so you can see what I'm doing again. And I'm going to click connect. So it says printer now is online. Obviously we don't have any end stops. So what I'm going to do now is just move it 10, and hopefully this won't be a disaster. So it moves to the right. Let's go to the left. So it seems a little strained. Now that could be because it's not tuned, and I'm not going to do a tuning video during a live stream because it's kind of dangerous and I like to take my time showing it. But there is a tutorial that I have either in my ramps or MKS playlist where you can look that up. But essentially that's how you do that. So let's set up homing. So I'm going to power down the system so that we can set that up. So I'll disconnect real quick here. And then I'm going to transfer over to here, and I'm going to pull the power. And then I'm going to pull this. So we know it's moving now. So the next thing we want to think about is our actual end stop. Now there's multiple types of end stops you can work with, but I'm going to pick the most simple one. I just got to find one. Okay, I think I stored it down here. Here we go. Yeah, over the break I was actually trying to set up a configuration for a different sound recording system, so everything's been broken down like 3 times over here. So I'm still working on that sound system so that I can make this better. But this switch is a very simple switch. Let me see if I can turn it so you can see better. So this only has a positive and a negative lead. Now we actually know where they are, but I'm going to, for review, go back and show you them. So let me see if I've got the browser up over here. So as you can see, it's 5 volts ground signal. So if memory serves correct, you don't want to do voltage and ground together. You want to do ground and signal. So signal would be 1.29. So I'll show you how you hook that up. This is the reason I like to check things, because I can make mistakes very quickly if I assume. So this would normally be voltage, but we're going to put it in ground. And we're going to take the ground and we're going to put it in signal. If you put it in the other 2 pins, you'll see smoke rise out of your board. So it's, I'll show you again so that you understand what I'm talking about. Over here, ground and 1.29. So it's the center pin and the one below it. the one above at top is voltage. You don't want to use that. Okay, so let's go back over to the board. So now we have an end stop. We can actually try and home this. So it's a simple end stop, so I'm going to plug it in for USB power. But I forgot to show you that we need to move this over when we're using direct power. That's why it sounds strained, probably. And I'm going to connect the power over here. And as you can see, everything seems to look okay. So let's go over to Pronterface for a second. Inside Pronterface, I'm going to reconnect, and I'm going to test the end stop by saying M119 and pressing enter. And as you can see, the one that we have connected says that it's open. So I'm going to test it with my finger real quick. I'm going to hold it down, and I'm going to click send again. And now it's triggered. So it's working right. So let's try and home the actual X-axis. So I'm going to put my finger on this just so I can trigger it. And I'm going to say home. So as you can see, it stops when you click it. So we know that's working. Obviously, you can't go backwards any further once you've homed and clicked the end stop, but you can go forward. So if you click over here, hopefully it goes forward, which apparently doesn't want to right now. So there might be something broken on this. So it does say printer halted, killed right here. So homing did fail, which is interesting. So let's disconnect. Hopefully nothing's about to explode. Apparently I've lost the ability to connect to it, so I'm going to power down the system. I'm going to remove this for a second. I'm then going to check the heat on this. This is not advisable to do. It's very hot. So something that runs that hot, you probably want a fan on it, or you want a heat sink. So let's see if I can find a heat sink real quick. I don't know if I accidentally cooked it, but that's one of the reasons we use heat sinks. It wicks away the heat. So give me a second to find one. Okay. I'm just worried I'm gonna let the smoke out, which if you haven't done it before, it's not a good feeling. And now I gotta get a heat sink. And I'm gonna stick it on the chip. And this allegedly will wick the heat away so it can cool. You also want to run a fan on it, but for now, the reason that I'm doing this is just to set this up and hopefully not smoke something by accident. So I'm going to plug this back in and the power back in, but I'm going to double check that I'm disconnected here. Looks like I am. So I'm going to power it up. I'm going to reconnect. I'm going to then move it forward. I'm going to move it backwards. See how far we can move it backwards. Sorry about that. Okay, so it doesn't know where its actual end stop position is. So I'm going to do a home again, and hopefully this won't break. And there looks like there's a bug. Looks like. So, what we can do to actually troubleshoot this is I'm going to power down the system for a second. And we're going to roll back to another build and see if this changes. So I'm going to disconnect that. I'm going to go over to VS Code. Hopefully it shows up here. And I'm going to close out of this. I'm then going to go over to the desktop. I'm going to go to my downloads folder. I'm actually going to delete these two for the moment. Hang on, something's in use here, which is right here. And that'll take care of that issue. Now I'm going to find an older build, which I keep on my desktop. So the last major release for Marlin, I think, was 2.0.7.2. So obviously I have this copy right here. So I'm going to go back up. I'm going to copy this folder. Then I'm going to go back over to my downloads folder, paste it right here. This might take a second, and I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Yeah, it might have a double tap. You're right about that. But let's see what's going on with the actual previous version. Then we can always jump back to this one. So I'm going to go into VS Code. I'm going to then go to Explorer, open folder, go to my downloads folder, open it, and see if this has a double tap, because that probably is the issue. And as you can see, they took out, or they don't have the INI folder here. This is why it changed. But so it should be kind of simple. We'll go to source core, boards.h. Let me move some stuff off my desk here. And one more thing off the desk, or two more things, just so I can move quicker. And let's search on core boards.h, search for SKR underscore 1_4, and I'm doing that wrong obviously, but it's right here. So I'm going to copy that. We know that it's LPC 1769, but I'm doing this for contrast. So go to configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it over the ramps. Then up here, you notice there's only 2 serial ports, not 3. Change this to -1. Leave the speed the same. Then we're going to search on A4988, and you can see the differences for the older firmware, which causes confusion to people like myself. I'm going to copy this, paste it here. We'll call this 160 again, if it allows me to click on it. And then we'll try and do a build, but obviously there's something still in there. So let's clean that out. And then we have to go to platformio.ini. And you can see that there's no folder they're pointing to. So we'll search on LPC, if I can type correctly, 1769. And you can see that it's right here for the default environment. That was the breakout of the folders that I was talking about. It's all separate files now, and I'm going to paste it right here. So we're good there. So now let's try a build. It may fail on the first time on this one because things might build out of order. If that's the case, just build a second time. If you see it a third time, find the very first thing in the build that failed and correct it. So let's see if this actually works. Looks like it did. So let's just do an upload, but it's not gonna fail here because I'm disconnected. So let me move the jumper over on the board so we can just do an upload. And obviously I gotta get on the right 2 pins. There we go. You'll see the light come on. We'll go back over to VS Code. And we'll upload if I hit the right button. Let's double check it. It looks like it's there. Let's go back over to the workbench. Disconnect, reconnect. Give it a second to beep. Okay, we're good there. Let's double check to make sure that it's actually loaded. So we'll go to the D drive. It loaded, so we're good there. So I'm gonna go back over to the workbench and plug this in after I make sure nothing's in the way. So it looks like it's safe. Let me find the power cord. It's gonna take me a second because I've got multiple power cords. That, and I want to make sure I'm plugging in the right thing. Okay, so here's the power cord. Let's make sure again. So I'm going to power it up. I don't see any smoke yet. So let's go over to here. And let's connect. And we're going to see if we can replicate the issue first. And then we'll try the double tap. So I'm going to move the actual axis. Okay, let's take it back 100. Let's move it forward 100. So I'm going to do a single tap and see what happens when it tries to home. And it dies. So let's try it again. So I'm going to disconnect, which I can't do here very easily. I'm going to power down the system. I'm going to unplug this cord for a second, plug it back in, plug it back in. So what I'm just trying to show you is that it's similar throughout. I know that was a long route to get there, but I'm going to reconnect, which I just did, and I'm going to move forward. Now I'm going to do a double tap. Okay, it says processing, and it doesn't look like it died, so it is a double tap. It's very quick. That was the reason that it didn't work, and the person in the chat picked out the issue before I did. So that's the issue with that. There may be a setting in the firmware, but let me check on the chat because I know there was a couple of questions. Let's see if I can find the question that was sent to me while I was probably chatting with you. So someone, I believe, has a ramps, and they're asking me a similar question, but I've got to look through here and find them. So someone was asking about the Big Tree Tech TFT 70. And they said that multiple fans couldn't work. I'll get to that in just a second, but there was one first question I gotta find here. So I just had to read through this real quick. Let's see. Do I need to attach end stop to run motor? I think I said no, but I don't remember. Let's see. Oh, he says his motor's not working, which is on the ramps. So I'm going to have to set that up. So I'm going to power down the system in just a second and do it on the ramps as well. But it's an A4988, so it's really possibly simple. Okay, so let's try it on the ramps. It's almost the exact same process. So let me check to see what the desk is set up. Let me power this down. Unplug this. I'm going to break down the system rather quick here. Pull this out. It's a little warm. It's probably about 100 degrees Celsius. And for some reason my board is extremely hot. That's probably why I don't run these steppers in it. But I don't think there's any damage, it's just hot. Okay, so let me grab the ramps again. So the ramps is a very similar process. So as you can see, there's a stepper here. Notice where the potentiometer is pointing this way. So I gotta look all this up because it's been almost a couple years since I've used this. Also, I see a couple of things that make me nervous on the board here. These should be back a little. This is actually the power rail jumper, and I'm just worried it's going to be up against the switch. So let me pull these out real quick. Just want to put this so it doesn't slide around on the table. And then I'll do the display in a second. So we're good there. Now the jumpers, normally this board might not have jumpers installed, but for the highest degree of step, you need to have all your jumpers jumped. And I'll pull them out so you can see. So I pulled that out. That's either MS1 or 2, I don't remember, or 0. The center one's MS1 probably, and then one of the ends is MS0 or 2. We can look that up in a second. So we're set up there. Now I need this. This is actually the X stepper, Y, Z. And you can tell it's Z because it's got 2 stepper pins right over here. So 1, 2. That's for this stepper if we were to use it. So we got to find the enable pin on here because I don't want to hook it up backwards and it's been forever. So let me make this bigger. Obviously it's easier to see. So let me point this out real quick again. We've got 2 Z steppers right here, and we're using a DuPont connector in this case. Other connectors might fit in except for that one on the Z axis. But let's go over to the browser so I can find this information. So in the browser, we're going to search on ramps 1.4 and it's pinouts that we're looking for. So we can scroll down through here and see if we can see the pinouts. We're probably not going to find them easily in here, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to type pinout, which is already showing up, and we'll click on this and then we'll make sure it's the right diagram. So it says it's for the ramps. Down here we actually see an EN. It's very tiny, so let's see if I can open it. This might take a second because I haven't been to this website before. So over here we've got a bigger view. So you can see EN right here. So we've got to also check on the stepper to make sure we've got that right. So I'll go back over to the desktop and I'll zoom in. Hopefully the camera won't power cycle down when I do this. We'll look at the stepper. Hopefully it'll be in focus. So you can see the EN right by my thumb. So we know where it is. So the EN is here. Let me zoom out a little. EN pin is right here according to the diagram that we were just looking at. So we're going to have to match those two. Make sure I'm on the actual pins. And then you're going to apply a little bit of thumb pressure once you get those in. And make sure everything is connected correctly. So it looks good. This may have come loose on me a little. So we're good there. Now I got to set up the power supply again real quick. If you haven't seen me do this, I did it at the beginning of the video, so I don't want to show it twice. So I'm just going to do it off camera and babble and look at the chat while that's going on. Okay, so all I'm doing is connecting the additional power cord for my 12-volt supply. This way I can run both the cables in. Otherwise the board will work really weird. And so let me just verify my setup here real quick. All I'm doing is double checking to make sure I have ground and voltage connected, and I have a second ferrule cable. So on this one, let me make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. You can pop this out, and notice how I put marks on it with black. That means ground, but we can double check it because I know I'm always wrong if I don't. So I'll go over to the browser, and as you can see, it's plus, minus, so voltage, ground, voltage, ground. So let's go back over to the workbench and verify that. So voltage, ground, voltage, ground. So we got to do the same thing now with the ferrule connectors. So we're gonna slide them in here, hopefully. I might have to loosen those a little, or they're already loose and I just don't know it. So counterclockwise, counterclockwise. Match up the colors, slide them in, hold them down, and then tighten it. I know this is probably moving around a lot while you're watching. Okay, nice and tight. Now we got to do the other two. Same thing, voltage, ground, voltage, ground. So we'll do the first one, hold it in, tighten it down, take the second one, slide it in, tighten it down. Everything's nice and tight. There's no wires sticking out. So we're gonna slide this in like so. So we're good there. Now to power this, we're gonna take our USB, slide it in here. You can hear it beep, so everything's good there. And we're also gonna do the end stops, but I gotta look up real quick what they are. So let's see what we got there. So let's go back over to the browser. And it says S minus plus. So plus is voltage, minus is ground, and S is signal. This is the X minus, so it's X minimum. So we want to use minus and S. So minus will do red this time because they're technically interchangeable. And the ground, let me show you what I'm doing because obviously you're not seeing it. So we're going to take this one and put it in minus, and this one we're going to put in ground. So that makes sense. We're then going to grab this and hold it up away. Let me see if I can tilt it so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. So we were basically just setting up the controls for the setup. Now this board is powered already by USB, as you can see that green light. So we'll go over to VS Code and set this up. So inside VS Code, let me transition back there. I need to make some quick changes. So I'm going to close the folder. I'm going to go over to the desktop for a second. Go to the downloads folder. I'll check on the chat in just a second. Let me just delete this, right click, extract all, and extract. And let me check on the chat. Okay, it's kind of quiet in there, that's fine. Yeah, so someone pointed out in the chat that you want to say define homing underscore bump underscore millimeters. And that comes from Austin. Thanks, Austin. So now that that's done, or almost done unzipping, we'll go back over to VS Code in a second. And inside VS Code, we'll go to Explorer, Open Folder, then we'll go to Downloads, Marlin 2.0, Marlin 2.0. We'll select the folder. And the cool thing about this is that everything is default already. So you have the Mega 2560. If you go over to Marlin source core, you could search for it, but you don't need to because this is the default board. So we'll go over to configuration.h and we'll search on motherboard. And here's something odd in the firmware that I just noticed. Notice how it says 2.0.8.1? That should say 2, because the version that they showed up here in the web browser, if you go to Marlin's website, usually follows a pattern where this number would be updated, which they did not do. So that might just be an oversight, maybe it's a bug or an enhancement request. We could report the issue, but they'll give you an interesting response like, please go to GitHub, or excuse me, please go to either Facebook or one of their locations and report it, or ask first and then open a bug. But for now, I'm just going to ignore it because it's not a big issue. It's just bad housekeeping, in my opinion. Anyways, what we're going to do next is we're going to search on motherboard. And you can see that the board's already selected. So we'll search on the stepper, which is A4988. It's already set up as well for the X stepper. Down here, we don't really care about the gearing because we're going to go with 80 because that's probably the default. So I'm going to try and build it first with the check because we already know that it's .pio is for this particular one. Now, the other thing I didn't show you is the actual serial port, so I'll show you that real quick. Up here, I left it at 0. So when we do an upload, you'll see what happens. So it's going to actually upload hexadecimal code, and essentially it sends a code that says, I'm going to do an upload. Here's what I'm going to send you. And that's what's occurring. I'm just abbreviating the process, but if you really want to get into it, then you're going to have to study the actual data sheet and how it works. But for now, I don't want to go too far into that. That's down a rabbit hole of a semester of comp sci. So anyways, it took 20 seconds. Let's go back over to the board. And you probably didn't see any flashing lights because I didn't do it. So I'll do it again so you can see it. The lighting might be a little bright, so let me see if I can turn it down so you can see what's occurring. There it is. That's it actually loading. So right now it's writing. Now it's doing a read. And it'll stop hopefully in a second. So it just finished. So let me turn the light back on. And what I'm going to do is try the same thing we just tried before. So let me find the correct power cord. It's going to take me a second. Here it is. So I'm going to plug it in. Hopefully we won't see any smoke. Then I'm going to go over to Pronterface. Inside Pronterface, I'm going to try and connect, but I don't know what I'm connecting to. So we're going to have to do a search on it. So I'll transition over to Device Manager. Inside Device Manager, we're going to go to COM ports again. You can see the chipset in this case, which is the Mega 2560, and it says COM port 21. So we'll go up here, we'll hit backspace twice, 21. Now you understand probably why I use Pronterface a lot, is because it's easy to work with. It's basically serial communication with a graphical interface. So I'll connect. This one gives you a readout of what's on your board. You can see the version number right here. I don't know why it's coming up correctly, but we'll let it go for now. Let's check our end stops real quick to make sure we're connected, which we are. So now let's try doing a move. Obviously it's moving fine. Let's try doing a home, and let me put my finger for the double tap. So I apparently didn't double tap quick enough, so we have to reset and try it again. So I'll power down the system. I also have to take out the USB, reconnect the USB, reconnect the power, because the USB is providing power to the board. And then we have to try and disconnect, reconnect, and let's move the axis again 100. And let me get ready for the double tap here. So I double tapped. Let's double check with an M119. Looks like it's fine. Let's move forward. So it works. So I'm not sure if that's the person's issue. I know they were probably talking about the Z axis, but the setup is very similar depending upon the end stop. So there was one other question that I got today, and that was having to do with the display. So let me set that up real quick. That's actually on a SKR 1.4, or I'm sorry, SKR Pro 1.4, or 1.2, or 1.1, pardon me. I'm getting all my boards confused. So let me break this down real quick. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat. And for those that are sending super chats or tips, thank you very much. I haven't had a chance to pay attention, but they're greatly appreciated. And also the people that are subscribed on, what is it, Twitch, I'm also grateful that you're there as well. So apparently I didn't know that I had more than one subscriber. I actually have almost a dozen now, which surprised me. But let me get the other board out here. So I'm going to do the SKR Pro, but I got to find one real quick. And I've got apparently several drawers of steppers, or excuse me, boards. And apparently I'm confusing them. Okay, so, whoops, grabbed the wrong one. Let me grab the right one. This one I always screw up with the power, so you're going to have to stop me and remind me every time I forget. Usually I plug in the wrong power supply on this, even though I have different connectors. So this is a take your time one. So the problem with this one was someone had a actual board where they wanted to turn on fans. Let me make this bigger. So all we're worried about are fans in this case. So I'm going to move this over so you can see. Sorry about the reflection. I've been trying to work on that. Someone suggested making the light diffuse a little, so I may have to change fabrics, but let me see if I can change it a little here. 2 seconds. Okay, that's the best I can do at the moment. So essentially on this one we have 3 fans. We have 0, 1, and 2. So we're gonna have to hook these up, and they have ferrule connectors that we need to attach. Now I've already done the ferrule connectors, but I gotta grab the fans. So we're only gonna do an example of 2 fans only because it takes a while. And maybe I'll show you how to do a ferrule connection because one of these fans is missing. But I'm gonna be doing 12 volts of power instead of 24. So I have to make sure that I'm matching the power to these. This, unfortunately, is a 24-volt fan, so it's not going to work too well. So I guess I can't show you ferrule connectors today. But let me see if I can find another one set up. This might take a second because I've got a million fans. Actually, I might have to show you a ferrule connector if I don't find another fan here. Let's see, there's a 12 volt. See what's going on with this one. If you're not seeing what I'm doing, I've got a drawer full of fans. And apparently, I've got to be careful which ones I pull out here. So here's another 12 volt fan. It is missing a ferrule connector, so we'll fix this. So as you can see, that's the wires right there. So it's going to take me a second to grab a ferrule connector. I just have to figure out where I place them, because I've got like 4 containers of them. Here we go. So here's a ferrule connector. Normally what I do when I'm working on my printer for the ground is I paint it with a Sharpie so that it's black, but in this case we're just going to follow the wires. And now I got to find my crimp for my ferrule connector tool. I know it's close by, just give me a second to find it. There it is. So this is a ferrule tool. It's really simple to use. You just open it and crank down. On this one, it's a rather cheap one that I bought. So if you don't know already, there's a way to make this more precise by changing. You take the screw out and you move the sprocket to tighten it so that you get a greater connection, because they usually design them for crimping larger wires. In this case, they're very tiny. So I'm going to take this out. As you can see, I've got the actual wire here, and I'm going to spin this with my finger as I put it on. Hold it with my other finger. Take this, slide it down in here so that it's holding. Put pressure on the back of the wire and crimp as hard as I can. Let go, and then make sure it doesn't slide off. So that's how you crimp your wires so that you don't have to worry about issues. Now the other issue is it might not fit super well in here, so you might see me struggle for a second, but I'm going to do fan 0 first. So I'm just moving counterclockwise to open up the gate where this goes in. And these ferrules are kind of big, so this might be a little bit of work. But you basically just move them around a little until they slide in, or at least that's the theory. But we don't know what's negative and positive. You see where it says positive down here on the board and negative over here? So this is ground. So I need to slide it in, kind of move up and down when you slide it in, and then tighten it down. Then you're going to do the same, and I'm using the silk screen on the board to tell me where things are. So you'll move it around a little, slide it in, and tighten it down. So that's our first fan. Let's do the second one. So we'll find the actual voltage first. So we'll slide this around. And it's not loose, obviously. So counterclockwise. And then I'm going to set up an actual display so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to move this up and down. Hopefully it'll get in there. Yeah, this one's a little bit harder to work with. So let me undo this even more. Okay, maybe we'll do fan 3. Yeah, something on these connectors, they're not super good, where I have to work them a little to get them in. There we go. So that one's in. Tighten that down. Do the same for this one. Now, obviously, I don't know if these work, but the way to test them, you can test them with a 9-volt battery. Sorry, this is just like super close in here, so. There we go. Started to move around a little. Sorry, this is going to be a struggle for a second. There we go. And that's in. So as you can see, it's not the easiest thing to move these in, but it's the safest way to do it. So we're good there. Now I need to fix the power. So it's 2 power cords, and I'll show you actually the diagram real quick. So if we go over to Marlin's website, make sure I got it up here. We'll click on Big Tree Tech. We'll go back to Big Tree Tech. We'll look for SKR Pro. Then we'll look for the, wow, schematic maybe? Oh, that's horrible. They changed the folder structure, I think, or I'm just imagining things. That's awesome. I might have to go to the manual to see this picture. Let's see what we got here. Looks like they made some changes. So I'm going to go over to the actual manual. There was a pinout diagram in there. It's probably the same or similar to this one, but it looks like they restructured their folders, which makes this confusing. So wiring diagram, user manual. We'll try this. It's obviously slightly different, but the boards, I think there's only one difference for a pin on the pinout diagram. So let's see if I can find it in here real quick. Okay, this is actually what I'm looking for. Bed power, and then there's hot bed, then there's power, then there's motor power. So I'm going to connect the motor power, which is plus, minus, plus, minus. We're not actually using the motor in this case. So I'm going to pop this open on the actual desk. I didn't realize they changed their diagrams recently. I'm going to then, as you can see, I've marked these with colors of red and nothing. Red means voltage. That's my way of avoiding damaging my board. So I'm going to connect voltage first, then power. Those are nice and tight. Now I'm going to do the same thing again, where it's voltage, then power, and then for safety, lock that down. So now let's get to the actual display. I've got to grab one. So if I go over to the displays, see what I got here. So in this case, I think the person's using a 7-inch display, but the process should be similar. But I'm going to show you what I've got here. Hopefully it's not going to be too much of a mess. There's the display. It's already connected in the back to the RS-232 connection, or they might call it something else. So let me see if I can find the pinout diagram that I was trying to find a second ago. Hopefully this will actually make sense if I can find it. So there is something that says pin. So what I'm looking for is the TFT over here, and I want to know where the reset is because that's the free wire that we have to worry about, and then the rest. So if we go over to the workbench, I've got the display here. It's already connected with the one side. Then I've got this for the free wire reset. Then I have the others. So you want to line them up so that the DuPont connectors match in the direction. Then you can hold this one out and you can plug in those first 4 wires right here. Then you can plug in the other one right here. So now that that's done, just to test it, we're going to put it on USB power, which it's already on over here. So I'm going to take the actual USB cable and slide it in here for a second. And the actual display lights up. So on the display, the issue they're having is they couldn't turn on a second fan. So I don't know if this is actually set up yet because it says no printer attached. We'll solve that in a second. But if you go to menu, heat fan, fan, you can see that there's fan full, fan, and then there's increase, decrease, and it says fan 0. So let's try hitting fan again. There's no change. Plus, so this is only working on one fan at the moment, right here. So let's see if we can fix that first. So in order to fix that, we have to do it in the actual config file. So to fix that, I'm going to have to go over and find the config file. So I'm going to go over to my browser. I'm going to go back to Big Tree Tech. The version of the actual display I'm using is probably in the touch screen, but I'll read it off for you. It's the TFT 35 MZ3V3. I'm sorry, it's version 3. So let's see if it's actually in here first. So if you go to this folder, there's a bunch of different things. There's a bootloader folder. We're not going to mess with that. What we're looking for is probably TFT source. This is actually probably for building it. So you can see the C files. So I'm in the wrong place. So let's see if I can find it. I may have to download it because it might be quicker for me. But this looks like, let's see, add support, update settings, copy to the drive. This is the folder we're looking for. So inside here they have different themes. Then they have different boards they're specifying for displays. And for some reason they put MKS in front of it. So I guess they manufacture or write the software as well. Okay, that's news to me, but fine. But let's see if we can find our version. So it's a TFT 35, and I believe it said E327. No, it's an MZV3. So I have to see if I have that, because that might be a variable one. I think I've got the right display, but this is news to me. I may not have updated this display or bought it and not thought about it, but I can always swap in a different one that's more common, or they have a different folder. So let me go back and check on that real quick. So if we go back up a directory, we could do a repository search, and we'll try TFT, and that's MZ, and there is a Big Tree Tech MZ. This might be a brand new thing. Apparently it looks like it's a manual. So let's see if we can find it in English, which we apparently can't. So let's see what we got in here. Big Tree Tech TFT panel, medium sized, yada yada yada, yada yada yada. So this might be a bad example. This is probably why I didn't do an actual tutorial on this one yet. But essentially it's the same as a regular TFT. So I'm just going to swap in a different one. It does have an ARM processor that's 120 megahertz frequency. Not sure why I bought it originally, but we'll swap in a different one just for this case, because I'm not sure how well this one will work. So I'm going to power this down. All I'm going to do is disconnect the cable. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff on this one, or it's a very old one. I can't remember which. So let me grab a different one. So I'm going to go with the TFT. Make sure I get my shelf back together here. I'm going to go with an older version. This is a version 3. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to find the actual connection for the RS-232 and follow the notching. There's two that are similar. It's probably this one, but we'll power it up and see if it works. It doesn't, so I'm going to unplug it. I know it's the other one, but I wanted to show you the mistake. This is SWD. This one is the actual one. I have a little green marking on it. So I'll place it back down, connect the power. This might look different from other ones. I may have been doing a tutorial on it. So let's go and check the menu real quick. So terminal, fan. It's got fan. It's still got the similar display. So let's see if we can do multiple fans on this. So we're looking for F0 to change. So that's new. Let's try going back. So that's a new functionality. Let's try 1. That doesn't change the fan, but that's just something I noticed. It probably means you're doing the increase decrease for the actual fan. Kind of like the beep, but not really. So let's see if we can fix that. So let's go back over and download the regular one. I know this is kind of wandering for explaining, but I just had to go off on a tangent to figure out what was going on. So I'm going to go to the Big Tree Tech folder. I'm going to click on the code button to download the code base and download it as a zip, and then press OK. This might take a second to download. Let me grab a little bit of something to drink. Apparently I get a little cotton mouth while doing this. Okay, so that's downloaded. Let's go over to the desktop for a second. Inside here, we're going to right click. We're going to extract all. This might take a second. I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Have I tried the SKR Octopus? I wish. It's still in the mail, meaning that I can see it. It's made it finally to my country, but I'm guessing it's another week or two. Somebody in the Discord chat has already used it. He says everything is functional. He does speak English in the chat, but if you're in Poland, he'll also speak Polish with you. Or Popolska. But he's pretty sharp. You'll see him in the general chat saying that he likes the board. Hopefully I'm not getting him confused with someone that lives in France. On occasion, there's like 300 people in the chat, so it's kind of hard for me to keep track of who's who. So, this is finally extracted. So I'm going to go into here, and this is going to be kind of confusing at first. I'm just going to browse around. I'm going to go into the folder. It says copy to SD card root directory to update. So it's making pretty clear what the directions are. Not that they're really clear, but I have to show you on the desktop what I'm about to do. So on the desktop, we have this board. We're going to program it. Now this one I think has a Wi-Fi chip on it that I forgot about. We're not going to talk about that today, but I'm going to talk about this. This is the SD loading. Let's check the version of the actual hardware. So let's go back. We'll go to settings. And inside here we want to know info. So it says 3.27 or 3.0.27, pardon me. And that was April 3rd, 2021. So this is a couple months old. There might be a newer one. So let's check to make sure. So if we go back over to the browser, I just want to verify some stuff. So inside here, the last update was 2 months ago. So I'm guessing that was April. I could be wrong, it might be 3 months ago, but we're going to reload anyways. And it applies to our board, as you can see over here, for TFT, and then it's version 1 and all the versions in between. That's why I default to this folder right here. So let's go back over to the computer on my desktop. Inside here, we're going to have to copy this to an SD drive, so I'm going to have to set one up real quick here. So I'm going to grab my SD drive. I'm going to open it up, see if anything's in it first. There's nothing in it that I can see, so we need an SD drive. This is going to take me a second to find one because I usually have them stacked up. So I have an adapter, and I have a USB micro SD, so I'll plug it in there. I'll put it in my adapter so I can go through USB with it, and we'll see if it actually works. It might be defective for the SD drive, but we'll find out. Plug it into the computer. We'll go back over to the computer. Looks like we have an F drive. We actually don't want to open that, but we're going to format the drive. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to format, and I'm going to, whoop, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to go to format, and I'm going to do a start. It's a quick format. It's going to disappear for a second. Pull it back up. I'm going to go to the drive. So the F drive is now formatted. Let's look at the properties. I went with the default format, so it's FAT32. Now we'll go back over to the downloads. We'll go into the Marlin master folder. And what we need to do is say copy to this drive. So we're going to right click and we're going to send to the USB drive. Now it's not letting us do it, which is awesome because it's huge. So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to go inside here, and I'm actually going to find the drive and copy the individual things over. So we're going to do a theme. So we'll do, I guess this one. This is new to me. And we'll send it to the F drive. It might still be too big. I don't know yet. And essentially what this is everything, which is probably a bad idea. So let's see if we can cancel that, because this is going to take forever. So stop, check the drive. I'm going to delete this for a second. Of course, this drive is super fast. and I'll go back to here and I'll click on this, and it's a 3.5 inch drive. So let's see if it's cleaned off. Hasn't cleaned yet. Let me clear the other thing that's still up here. Okay, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to send to the drive. Of course, it's still taking forever, but these are all the bitmaps and fonts. So we're good there. Now we're going to go find the actual version. So it's a TFT 35, but it's version 2. So we might have an issue. Actually, it might be version 3. Let me look. So on the actual device, it's written on either the front or the back. In this case, it's version 3. So we're going to find the TFT 35, and we're going to find version 3. So we're going to right click, and we're going to send to the USB drive. Next, there's a configuration INI, or config.ini. We're going to right click, and we're going to send to the USB drive. So the other thing we have to worry about is language. I'm not going to do a foreign language today, so we're going to go with English. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to send to the USB drive. So we've got all that set up. Let's go to the USB drive. I'm going to right click on not the language but on config.ini, and I'm going to open with, hang on, I gotta find it, edit with Notepad++. Notepad may change it, so keep that in mind. I'm going to pull this over so you can see what I'm doing. And as you can see, in here it says supports for TFT variants. So as you go down through here, there's going to be particular configurations. It looks like they already updated this file. It looks like right here it says 515. So I don't know what's going on with their actual source control, or maybe it's this particular file, but they did make a change since April, obviously. So let's scroll down and see what we got here. So it says enable screen status. So there's a default setting you can set where you can, let's see, status screen or home screen display, the current temperature, fan speeds. So this is a setting you can set. Over here is the baud rate. This is another question people asked, and earlier I talked about that was the speed of Marlin firmware that I configured. So I'm going to change the baud rate. Well, it's already defaulted to that speed. So this goes together, or maybe it's actually 6, I'm sorry. So I'm going to change that to 6. That will give us the correct baud rate, and I'll show you that in a moment. Then down here, there's multi-serial. This is brand new to me. So it says enable multi-serial. Multi-serial connect. Connected to ESP, Octoprint, or other TFT. I guess this is something I can try out in the future. But apparently it's giving you a bunch of options. So let's read through them. I think we want to do the first port, but this is all new to me, so I want to go with disable all multiple serial. I'll have to experiment with this on my own time because I know I'll make this more confusing if I don't leave it alone. English is what we're going to go with, so it's 0, but you can do secondary languages like Deutschland, Polska, Espanol, and others. But for now, I'm not going to talk about those. So we can do colors and all sorts of stuff. But the main question the person asked that I went off on a tangent about was fans. So we're not going to talk about rotating the UI or anything like that. But I'm going to search on fan. So let me bring this over so you can see what I'm doing. Let's do a count. It's 14 matches. So let's find the first one. So it says fan count. very first one. So right here, it says the value range, minimum is 1, maximum is 6. So we're gonna do 3. We only have 2 fans connected. So hopefully that's correct. Now the other thing is, it may not know where to point these. We'll figure that out in a second. There's controller fan support. This might be new functionality. Don't quote me on this stuff. I have to experiment with it. But for now, that's what we're going to go with. It looks like you can set different thermistors and stuff, but we're only focused on fans. The whole point of me bringing you into the INI file is just to show you the functionality. There are also quick things you can do down here with different materials. I'm just going to go through it real quick. You have your custom G codes that you can put in here. You could probably see the pattern and how it works. The /n means line feed in C. If it were /n/r, that would be line feed carriage return, or maybe it's new line. So I get these confused sometimes because I think in terms of line feed carriage return, which a lot of people don't understand. It's just more deep into the computer, but N in C is probably new line, which might be a combination of line feed carriage return. But either way, I have to experiment every time I do this because it varies. This is usually what a return looks like in C. But I'm going to leave that alone for now because that's too tangential. So we've got this all set. I'm going to hit Control S to save, close out of this file. And as you can see, we have it. We just saved it. It's on a drive. I might have screwed this up, but we'll find out in a minute. It may need to be on the root of the drive, but we'll find out. And everything else is on the root of F. So let me pull that out. And we'll go over to the desktop. I know it was a long route to get there. Transition back over here. I'm going to pull the drive out. I'm going to power down the power. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to place the drive in here. I'll hold that up in a second as soon as I power it up. Notice how I'm on 5 volts of power, not on direct power. Now, the board is not powering up just yet. I may have screwed something up, or something is loose. Let's try pulling that. Okay, pull the power, drop this back in, power it back up, and hopefully it works. Well, that's very interesting. So either I'm knocking something loose, or it doesn't want to power, or it's in a different mode. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to pop this out. I'm going to take out the Wi-Fi, pop this back in. That's super interesting. Never seen that happen before. It might be my drive. So this drive might be too big. So let me pop this out for a second. Pop this out. And the drive is only 120 megabits. It might be too small. So I'm going to pop this back on the computer and find a different drive, because I know it works with another one. So let me just grab that drive. It's buried someplace over here. So let's go over to the desktop for a second. Apparently there's a detail I'm missing. So inside here, we're going to go to the F drive. Copy this. We'll go to download. We'll say TFT firmware load. We'll paste it right here. And apparently it doesn't want to paste. So there might be something wrong with the drive. So that might be the issue. So let's just see if we can copy this to a separate folder. Let me just get a second one up here. And let's get another one over here. And see if it works. So download TFT. That worked. So something's wrong inside one of these. So let's try individually. So apparently this file's corrupted somehow. So do I still have it open? That could be the issue. It's not still open, so let me delete it. See if it works. It deletes. Let's try and undelete it. Apparently it doesn't want to undelete, so let's go grab the right one. So it was in downloads, firmware. Oh, I'm in the same folder, pardon me. Let's see, copy to the directory, copy, paste. Let's edit it here. Let's see, edit with Notepad++. Let's just search for fan. I obviously made another change to the settings. This was 6. It may have been when I put the control character in there. That's my concern. Fan count is 3. And Control S. Then I'm going to close out of here and see if I can copy or check it real quick. Okay, so I'm going to copy all this to the drive. I'm going to check the drive. If it doesn't work this time, I'll change drives. So I'm going to delete all the information. Obviously, it's going to take a second, so let me look at the chat while that's going. It's gone. I think you're trying to say that it's not working. So as soon as this finishes, we'll try it again. And while that's working, let me see if I can find an actual spare drive. There it is. So I have a second drive right here, but let's see what's going on. Why is this not deleting? Interesting. Anyways, let me see if you can see what I'm seeing. Let me copy these over. Put them back on the drive. I have a backup drive in case this doesn't work. Okay, so a couple of seconds away. Now it's not uncommon for the drive to get corrupted or not have enough space. So I do have an 8 gigabit one. The other one I'm using currently is 128 megabits. So it's telling me destination already has config.ini. Awesome. So replace. And let's pop that drive out and see what happens. Okay, so let's double check the power. It powers up. Let's drop this in. So I think it's a drive. So I'm going to pop this out, double check the drive's working. It is. I'm going to grab the 8 gigabit one that I have and pop this into the computer and see what's going on. So these are common things people will see. So let's go back over to the desktop. Let me open a second drive here. Okay, I'm gonna delete this stuff. I'm not gonna format the drive, but let's check the properties. It says FAT32. That could be another possible thing. I'm gonna right click, copy, paste. Hopefully this one will be quicker. Okay, now that that's done, let's go back over to the workbench, and hopefully this time it won't be a headache, because I know it works. So I'm going to pop out the drive, I'm going to pop it into here, and try and power it. And now it's working. So something was up with the drive. So as you can see, right now it's doing an upload. It's going to ask me to touch the screen in a second, possibly for different spots on the board. One of the tricks that I like to do is use a pointer of some type, because my finger apparently is too large for these, but it's measuring the magnetic field around your finger. So if you use something that's pointy and metal, it works better. This is going to take a few seconds. I'll show you what the end result looks like, but right now we're just going to watch it for a few moments. It's like watching paint dry, and I'll try and put it at an angle where you can actually read it. And I'll check on the chat in a second, but I'm standing a little bit at an angle where I can't read it. So as soon as this finishes, right now I think it's copying Unicode fonts. So there's a lot of things copied. Then it's going to do bitmaps maybe. You can also do your own logos. I've shown a video or a live stream where I've done that. I don't remember which one it is. But it's matching your bitmap sizes. So you have to do a properties on your bitmap in your computer and then match your photo to that and name. So as you can see, there's a lot of files. And each one of those folders has a different type of setup. So I might be a little bit clueless when it's finished, because I may not have used this before in this particular configuration. So it's just going to be a quick learning curve, hopefully. Okay, now it's going to load all the other stuff. Here's our English language. And then it's going to load the INI as well, and I'll show you what's going on. So I'm going to pop the card out, and I'm going to explore real quick. So menu, I'm going to go to fans, but I don't know where they are. So movement, heat, fan, and it says F0. So the solution to this is probably not going to be fun, because as you can see, we've got an interesting thing. It's saying what speed. It's got check. It's got some kind of, that might be enter. It's got exit probably, and then refresh. So let me turn the camera back on. So that's not working very well for this configuration. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on with the fan. So obviously there's no printer attached at the moment. So one of the ways you can get around this problem, if you can't find multiple fans because of the way they've written this, is to go to a terminal and you can send the G code. and that'll turn on the fan. I think it's M107, but I have to look it up. And then send. So it's M107 P0 space and then S and then the speed that you want the fan to go. Or you can set it up as a command. So if you go back and you go to custom, you can actually add the fan speed to turn it on as a regular command. So unfortunately, I don't know why they set up their menu in such a way, but menus may vary depending upon which actual one you're using. But I think they should make it like multiple extruders, or I made a mistake, but let's see, nozzle. Yeah, so in this case, it's showing just one nozzle. It's kind of frustrating. So let's see if we can manipulate it in the actual VS Code, or not VS Code, in the config file. Maybe we can add a second extruder. So I'm going to add this back to the computer for a second. We'll go over to the desktop. We'll right click on configuration, and all I'm going to do is make a change. So I don't know how well this is going to work, so I'm going to do edit notepad, and I'm going to search on extruders. So hot end count, we're just going to say 2. This is just so we can see what's going on. Then I'm going to save that. I'm going to close out of the config. And I'm going to send this over to the other one, but I'll show you what's going on with the other one. So if we go to the F drive, inside here, if I put the right card in, sorry, give me a second. So I left the blue card on the board, or on the table. So I got to plug it back in here. I think it's the F drive. And as you can see, everything says cur. So all I'm going to do is delete it. And cur means that it's already been loaded, or current. I'm going to then copy this and send it to the F drive. And we'll see if it makes a change. So I'm going to pop this out. Go back to the workbench over here. Pop out the drive, power down the actual board, plug this in, and it looks like it's just updating the config, but we can verify that. So now what you see is a slightly different thing going on here. So fan doesn't give you 2 fans, so let's go back. Over here, it doesn't seem to give you a second nozzle, but let's see. There we go. So if you hit nozzle, you see them cycling through the first nozzle, the second nozzle, and then the bed. So let's go back over and see if that works for the fan. So fan, 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 fan. So that's how you find multiple fans. Sorry, I had to learn the display as I was talking. Now let's see if we can test it. So I'm going to have to set up the firmware for this. So I'm going to unplug it. I'm actually going to change it to direct power, and I have to load the firmware. So I'm going to pop this out. I'm actually going to pop it into my drive over here. I'm also going to take this drive out. And then I'm going to put this back into the computer. Now, my memory is not super good on which number to do for the second serial, but we'll figure it out. There may be some cheats to it. So let's go over to the desktop for a second. Let's go over to Marlin. The version that we worked with a second ago was for the ramps, so we know we're in default. We're not really interested in the actual steppers. So what we're going to do is we're going to say first serial port is -1. We're then going to go over to the source folder, the core folder, boards.h. We're going to search on SKR Pro. We're going to grab the first one. Then we're going to go back to configuration.h, scroll down to motherboard, paste it. Now we have to add the second serial port. So we have serial port 1, which is to our computer, and serial port 2 is going to be, in this case, to our display, unless they've changed the implementation, which is starting to look like what they did. I don't know yet if that's true, so we're just going to uncomment the top one and leave this one alone, because I think this is the speedier motherboard. Now obviously there's notes here that I probably should be reading, but I'm going to ignore them for now. So this number I think is either 1 or 0, but there I'll show you a way to cheat or verify your thinking. If you go over to the web browser, hang on a second, let me get it up in front of me. And if we're on the browser, we can go over and we can look at example configs for the SKR. They usually show you which number it is, but they might be reversed from mine. So let's go to firmware and let's see if there's anything about TFT display. This one probably has it. So we'll click here and then we'll search for Marlin config.h and we'll look for the second serial. So it's 1. And notice how they're doing, the board is the first one and the other one is the second. This will be interchangeable, and this is also an old configuration file. And if you want to see what version it is, it's obviously up here someplace. So this is 2.0.6. So if you ask me a question and I don't know what's going on, make sure that you know what version you're working with, because example files will get you into trouble. That's why you should, unfortunately, watch all my tutorials, because if you miss a detail, I'm probably going to ask you to watch the tutorial first. A lot of people like to say they tried it. Most of my tutorials work. Some do break, but 99% work. Anyways, let's go back to the actual configuration and verify it. So -1 and 1. So now we have to set up the default environment. Obviously this is the fun part. So we have to go to here, and right now it's on the wrong chipset, so we have to go to the INI, but we don't know which folder to pick. So here's a quick way to do it. You go over to the source core boards.h, you find the folder you're in, you look to the right, and you see STM32F4. So minimize that, go up here and look for STM32F4. Then you're going to search on SKR Pro. You'll find yours right here. You'll copy it. You'll go to the INI. You'll paste it right here. Obviously, these directions have changed from my video, but I do call out what the default environment is. This is just a recent change Marlin made that just simplifies it, and I went over it earlier in the actual stream. So let's do a clean, and then we'll do a actual build with the check. Build is a combination of compiles for those that don't know. Also, if it fails on the very first time, compile a second time because there's something building out of order possibly. If it fails a third time, fix your first error. Sorry, I always have to repeat that because I get that question a lot. So it's building right now. This one we have to copy over manually to the drive because it will not upload automatically. So hopefully this is going to work. I know it was a long route to get to it, and I've been talking for over 2 hours, so I'm starting to stutter more. But the process for this one is you go to .pio, and down here you're going to look for your .pio, then your SKR folder, and then down here there's the bin. You're going to right click, say Reveal in File Explorer. You'll right click again, and what we'll do is we'll actually check to see what's on the drive first. So it's the E drive, and you can see that there's firmware.cur, and there's also a G code file or something you want to print. I just put that there because I was running tests. So I'm going to send this to that drive, and I can verify it's there. And now I'll go back over to the desktop and load it. So I'll pop this out of the computer. I'll pop the drive in here. I'll actually change the power to direct power, hopefully. I think I already did, but if this powers up, then I'm supposed to be on the other. Okay, so it's showing the light, but will not show the power there until I plug it in. So that means I got to trace my wires out because I've got two different power supplies. So give me a second to do this safely. Okay, so I'm going to plug it in and hopefully nothing bad will happen. The fans might go on, but we'll see. Okay, so it's powering up. It's saying no printer attached at the moment. Then it went out because we've got that all matched up. So let's go over and try the fans real quick. Hopefully these work. So menu, then we'll do heating and fan, fan, fan. So we're on the first fan, so that would be number 2. Let's do the third fan, which is F2. And then we're going to say full. And as you can see, it went on. So let's go to fan 0, which is this one, and we'll do full again. Now this fan might be defective or it was stuck on the table, and it works as well. So let's do stop. So fan 0 stopped. Now let's try fan 2 and stop. So that solves that problem. So the person that had that issue, I hope that answers your question because I kind of took forever to get to the answer. But for those that are doing super chats and tips in PayPal or on Twitch, I'm eternally grateful. It helps me offset the cost of buying equipment to do these tutorials and some of my time. And everyone, I want you to take care, be safe, get vaccinated if you can, and have a nice night. I'm gonna stop streaming now because it's almost 8:30, and I've got to, or 8:15, and I gotta go do some laundry. So thank you all for coming. I might do another one Friday, but I'm gonna try and back off on live streams for a while so that I can do more actual recording of tutorials. So for those that don't know, there's a GitHub, or excuse me, a Discord where you can comment on tutorials you want to see. It's not a guarantee I'll make them, but due to the complexity or space issues that I currently have, a lot of tutorials, I'm trying to find ways to present them. And for those that don't know, I built a fixture that I'm almost done with. I just have to do more development on it. And I'll show you real quick what it looks like if I can get this without crushing my board. Here's the actual mini fixture that I'm working on. It'll have things that I can swap in and out. It'll be available for people on the, excuse me, I gotta think for a second. It'll be available for people that are my patrons on Patreon for a download, and I might put something new up on Patreon for a download tonight for those that have been asking for stuff for the Ender 3 for the BL Touch. But hopefully I'll do that tonight if I remember, but I got to do some laundry. So everyone, thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you later.